Princessa Jasmine is feeling much better, and I want to thank everyone for their well wishes. Now, I wish I could say something about the bad reviews that I'm going to give. Well, some of them are not popular reviews, but stay tuned for my August wrap-up. Hi Booktube, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn Maya, the baby boomer booktuber, and this is my August wrap-up. August hasn't been a good month for me in reading, but I did read 2 5-star books, so that's good. First, I want to take you to the books that I DNF'd for now, or put aside, or bailed on completely. And I'm just going to go through those really quickly because, well, I have the books that I really liked. So I abandoned Where the Rhythm Takes You by Sarah Doss. Not because I didn't like it. It's more of a YA book, and it has a lot of music in it, so I think I'm going to try to do this on an audio. It's also a retelling of Persuasion, and I think I was Jane Austen out from July. So I'm not saying goodbye to this forever. So the next one I am saying goodbye forever to is Early One Morning by Virginia Daly. This is a novel, fictional novel about Italy during the Second World War, and how a young woman is given a baby or a little boy from a transport, probably going to a concentration camp. I could not get into this book. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't get into it. If anybody has read this and has a different idea about it, let me know. It's told in the voice of an Italian woman who takes the boy, and then there's some conflict, but I couldn't get into it. Then the next book is a similar book that I will try to get back to, but I just wasn't in the mood. It's called Between Sky and Sea by Hertz Bergner. And this is a translated book, and I'm trying to see what it's translated from, maybe the Polish. But if not, I'll let you know. And it's about also it's a novel, fleeing the Nazi invasion of Poland. A group of Jewish refugees are thrown together, human cargo on a dilapidated Greek freighter bound for Australia and the promise of a new life. And I think this it's taken after a real incident that happened. But the beginning was very depressing, and I wasn't in the mood for that. So I will get back to this, but right now I'm thinking that a lot of fictional World War II novels are not for me. But I could be wrong. I mean, there could be one that I like. But for right now, I'm putting this down. The next book that I'm DNFing or bailing or abandoning, and for good, is Rita Mae Brown's and Sneaky Pie Brown, Cat of the Century. And I read her memoir, Ruby Fruit Jungle, and I didn't love that, but it's a classic gay novel. And I read it all the way through. Let me just tell you, she's a great writer. And I'm not that much into cozy mysteries, but she's a great writer who writes about mysteries that I wasn't interested in, and but you might be interested in it. So let me just tell you that so it's called Cat of the Century, and Harry's beloved and taut-tongued Anne Talley is about to turn the big 100. The alumni association of her alma mater sees an opportunity to honor the event and make some loot off the centennial as well. So I wasn't really interested in the premise of the book, and I just, got bored despite her good writing. But you may like it. Okay, now let's get to the books that I finished and rated. All right. last night, it was August 31st, and I read the Mayo Clinic Guide to Integrative Medicine, and conventional remedies meet alternative therapies to transform health. I read this in one sitting, and I've been to the Mayo Clinic on a tour with what was called Elder Hostel. I forgot what they're called now, but they changed their name. And it's a amazing place in Rochester, Minnesota. And they are really on the forefront. These two brothers started the clinic. I'm not even sure when, maybe 100 years ago. And we went to their house and we saw the innovative techniques of medicine that they use. And they even have a spa now on the premises. And they also, they were showing us different parts of the hospital, the children's section, the cancer section, and there was like music all around, playing all the time. And it's a very interesting place. The book itself is really good. It talks about different alternative medicine therapies and which ones really work, which vitamins work, which therapies work. They go into yoga. They go into acupuncture, massage, vitamins, the whole bit. And then they have like a little section where it says what we think, what Mayo Clinic thinks. And it was very good. I feel it could have been a little bit chunkier because I was really enjoying it, and I read it. I really believe in this, mind-body medicine because I really believe it works. So I really give this 4 stars. All right. Now, the next books are my 4 and 5 star books, and they're not many. So I'm going to start with 4 to 4.5 stars. I started with giving this book 4 stars. And as I did some research after I read the book and understood where the author was coming from, I added a 0.5 star. And first of all, it's a beautiful cover. So the book is Inheritance from Mother. Now, isn't that beautiful? And what I loved, and I showed this on my haul, that the translator is in gold lettering. And her name is Juliet Winters Carpenter. And I like that she was given that special treatment as a translator. And the author of this book is Minae Mizumura. And before I filmed this, I asked my daughter, who lived 7 years in Japan, how to pronounce some of the names of the people in this book. So first I'm going to read what they say about it, and I'm going to tell you what I think. So Mitsuki Katsura, a Japanese woman in her mid-50s, is a French language instructor at a private university in Tokyo. Her husband, whom she met in Paris, is a professor at another private university. He's having an affair with a much younger woman, and she finds out about it. So in addition to that, we're finding out that Mitsuki must deal with her ailing 80-something mother, and she's a piece of work, the mother. And she's a demanding, self-absorbed woman who is far from the image of the patient, self-sacrificing Japanese matriarch. And Mitsuki finally guiltily thinks that she can't wait for her mother to pass. So somebody said the first sentence was based on The Stranger, but it's not. It's So How Much Do We Get Back from Golden, which I read the last time, and Golden was a retirement home that the mother finally died. So this book was, now this is what I found out just recently. This book was originally in the 2000s a serial novel in a newspaper, and I recently found out that a lot of women's what we call women's literature or women's books, were serialized novels. And that made me like it better and gave me the half a star more. I said before, I liked that they were short chapters with titles. And this goes for it and it goes against it. So let me just tell you real quick. The premise, I told you the premise of the book. But the first half of the book is really not so much about the person who is taking care of her ailing mother, while her sister, and I found her sister is pronounced her name Natsuki. I was going to say Natsuki, but my daughter told me it's Natsuki, and so she's Mitsuki and her sister is Natsuki. Now, Natsuki was the favorite daughter for a long time, but Mitsuki ends up taking care of her mother. And the first half of the book is all about her mother passing away. It's about the mother whose name is Katsura, the family going into family history. And some people might find that a little boring, and what's the point of it all? But so the mother, whose name Noriko, I hope my daughter told me how to say that right. Noriko, I think she said, is her mother was a geisha, and she was born illegitimately, or she was like the concubine of her father, and then the other wife died and she became the wife. I don't know how that worked, but she ended up leaving and marrying for love to Noriko's real father. So I guess she was spoiled. Noriko is the mother. So yeah, she's a really demanding mother. So Mitsuki is going through a lot. She has to deal with the doctors, and her mother is so demanding. And I think a lot of it had to do with how they prolong life in Japan and how it's not a good thing. And the doctor kept on coming up with new ways to prolong her life as she goes through, as the mother, Noriko, goes through more and more and more disease and invalid, and she becomes totally, almost a vegetable by the end. So, of course, here is this woman, her husband is cheating on her, and I'm talking about Mitsuki, dealing with all of that and dealing with money. So the first half of the book is mostly about Noriko, really, and about her life and why she's like this, and the sisters are, talking about why is mom like this, and, and going back into the family history. And it was interesting, but it just took too long for me. And when I realized that it was serialized, I realized that that's why there's a lot that could have been taken out, but probably it wasn't, because of the fact that it was serialized in a newspaper. The second half of the novel, the mother finally dies. And I'm not telling you anything because it says inheritance on the cover from mother. So what is she going to do? The mother dies, and then the inheritance is not enough really for her to leave her husband and live on her own, because she's not well. It sounds like she suffers from fibromyalgia, but they don't really go into it, and some kind of chronic, she's always cold and she has chronic illness. She's stiff when she wakes up. And, so she's going through a lot, and the second part is, okay, after all this self-sacrifice, is she finally going to have a happy life? And I have to admit, I enjoyed the second part a little bit more than the first part. She ends up, and I'm not telling you anything that's going to spoil it, because this is not a plot-driven novel. It's a character-driven novel. So, and it's also about life after the war and what it did to the culture and the people. And it has a lot. There's a lot in this book. So she goes to a hotel to think about what she's going to do, and she has adventures. And that's all I'll say about it. Her husband is hardly in the novel except when they're talking about him. There's a lot of talking about other people in this novel because a lot of them are dead or, she's telling history. And her husband is Tetsuo, and he's quite selfish. She realizes he never loved her, and he's in Vietnam for the whole year on a sabbatical of some kind, and that's when she finds out that he's cheating on her, and what is she going to do? So that's a lot. So newspaper novel, serial novel, 66 short chapters, women of a certain age, women who have to take care of their parents, because now, before the children had to take care of their parents in Japan. And now there are places like the Golden, a retirement home. But it's not like it is in the States or anywhere else. It's still more of a Japanese style. So the mother is a mass of sorrows and frustrations, chasing her dreams, and her daughter really resents that because she didn't have that privilege of doing that. And she feels like her sister, Natsuki, who also has a physical condition, was given preference by her mother because she was prettier. And there's a lot going on in this book, as you can know. But Minae Mizumura is a very good writer. And now I understand why her endings are so good, because they're actually short stories. But they blend in wonderfully. It's not like a short story collection. It is a novel, but it blends beautifully. I suggest you read this novel for yourself if anything that I've said interests you. So that's Inheritance from Mother, 4.5 stars. I talked a lot about Barbara Pym, and I only had read 2 chapters of this when I did my haul. And this is Quartet in Autumn by Barbara Pym. Also a beautiful cover. It's autumn colors, orange. And the quartet is 2 men and 2 women who are in 1970s London. And they are working in an office. We're never really told what the office does. And in fact, when they retire one by one, I'm not sure if all of them retire, I can't remember, but the office actually closes that section. So and that kind of shows you what the novel is about. It's about getting older, being lonely, watching the world go by. A subtle novel, yet not, it's very subtle, but it's not depressing. And I really loved it. I love the voice of the novelist, and I read somewhere that you can imagine that Barbara Pym is having these thoughts as she's getting older. I recommend this book, 5 stars. I loved it. So that's all I'll have to say. It's a short book, so not a lot happens. It's also a quiet novel, but I enjoyed the everyday of their lives. They're different, but yet they're going through the same, looking at the world from afar, thinking about romance that they're never going to have for different reasons, and just 5 stars. My last book is a book that I first heard about on Shawn the Book Maniac's channel, and he had a guest who was the translator of this book, and I knew that this was a book for me, even though it's a collection of short stories. It's called On the Landing, Stories by Yenta, translated by Ellen Cassedy. Ellen Cassedy was his guest. And I'm going to do a full review on this, so I'm only going to really give you a taste of what I felt. It's a moving collection, it says, of stories by an inspiring survivor who brings humanity to unrepresented history. And who wrote this? Ruta Sepsis, author of Between Shades of Grey, which was a fictional account of Siberia. So this, unlike the author who wrote Between Shades of Grey, is that an actual true account of her life. But I'm not going to call it autofiction because that would be doing it a great disservice. Let me read you a little more. It says, in these 16 stories, available in English for the first time, because it's translated from the Yiddish, prize-winning author Yenta traces an arc across continents, across upheavals and regime changes, and across the phases of a woman's life. Masha's protagonists are often in transit, poised on the landing, on their way to or from something else. In imaginative, poignant, and relentlessly honest prose, translated from the Yiddish by Ellen Cassedy, Mash documents the lost world of Jewish Bessarabia, the texture of daily life behind the Iron Curtain in Soviet Moldova, and the challenges of assimilation in Israel. Okay, so of these 16 stories, it starts out, sort of in order of her life. Her beloved town, Bessarabia, which, like it says here, is in Moldova right now. And all traces of the Jews that live there, they're gone. They're gone. And it was a rich community. And she goes into her childhood, and her parents were sent to, and this is true. This is not fiction, yet it is. And I'll explain that later. So she goes into her past in this little town and why it was so special. So the first story, it's not her name, of course, it's another name, and she's going back to see what's left and remembering. And it goes on in the book. The family are arrested and sent to Siberia, and the women are separated from the men. And I read, there's a story where the mother dies and is lost in the forest, and I read that that's a true story of her mother. And also, then she goes into being, not belonging anywhere, and being Jewish myself, and my grandmother spoke Yiddish. The cadence of the language, the Yiddish language, and the generational trauma, it touched me on a deep level. And Yenta was very adamant about having her work not translated, but she wrote in Yiddish, even though when she went to Israel, she was discouraged from using Yiddish by the Israelis. Not all of them, but it was not something that they wanted to remember. But she wanted to remember Yiddish, which is a language that is not widely spoken. And before she was, I think it was 1972, when Yenta was allowed to leave the Soviet Union at that time. And before that, she was a bookkeeper, and she was afraid of being arrested in Moldova for speaking out, so she didn't write at all. So when she finally went to Israel, she was able to write, and boy, is she a great writer. I recommend this highly. I cried, I laughed, I remembered, and I recommend this book as a 6 out of 5, as someone said. Well, that's what I read on my first year anniversary month. I tried to read more, but a lot of the books were bigger books, so I didn't read as many books as I wanted to, but I really loved the books that I did read. So I hope you enjoy my wrap-up. I hope, tell me in the comments if you read any of these books. Tell me if you want to read any of these books. And please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in my next video. Aloha.